Imagine finding out that your entire childhood was a lie. That your sister was actually your mother the whole time. Well, that's exactly what happened to Hollywood legend Jack Nicholson. But that's not all. One Hollywood legend faked his wife's death. Another star seduced her stepson and then married him. You weren't supposed to hear any of this. These secrets were buried so deep, even the stars themselves didn't always know the truth. All to protect one thing: image. This is what Hollywood never wanted leaked. Not just some plain old studio beef, but instead, family, blood, betrayal, and lies so deep, they cracked real lives wide open. Brace yourselves. We're starting with what might be one of the most disgusting family secrets in this entire video. Gloria Graham, the stepson scandal that destroyed her career. She was his mother. He was her teenage stepson. And then, she married him. That's not a movie plot. That's real life. That was Gloria Graham.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bailey.
Hello, Violet. Hey, you look good. That's some dress you got on there.
What? This old thing? Well, I only wear it when I don't care how I look.
In the 1950s, she was one of Hollywood's brightest stars, with dangerous charm. But behind the glamour, her personal life read like a script no studio dared to greenlight. It started when Gloria married director Nicholas Ray, the man behind Rebel Without a Cause. With that marriage came his 13-year-old son, Anthony. Gloria helped raise him. She was his stepmother. But after the divorce, something strange happened. Years passed. Gloria disappeared from the spotlight. And then out of nowhere, she re-emerged, not in a movie, but in the tabloids. Because she had just married Anthony, her former stepson. The backlash was instant. Headlines screamed. Industry insiders whispered. And no one could agree on what was worse: the age gap, the power dynamic, or the possibility that their relationship began before he was of age. One Hollywood biographer claimed Nicholas Ray once walked into a room and found Gloria and his teenage son in bed. That story was never confirmed, but it never went away either. Studios panicked. Casting directors blacklisted her. Her once glittering career crumbled almost overnight. And what did Gloria do? She stayed with Anthony for 14 years. Had children. Tried to live a quiet life. But the scandal followed her to the grave. And in the end, she died in near obscurity, not for what she did on screen, but for what the world believed she did at home. However, that wasn't even Hollywood's darkest family lie. Because the next actor? He didn't marry his stepson. But he was lied to by his entire family, for decades. Jack Nicholson, the sister who wasn't. For 37 years, Jack Nicholson believed he had a sister. Smart, kind, always protective. A little overbearing, but that's what big sisters do. Except she wasn't his sister. She was his mother. And the woman he thought was his mom? That was actually his grandmother. The lie began when Jack was just a baby, born out of wedlock in 1937, a scandalous thing back then. To protect the family's reputation, they pulled the oldest Hollywood trick in the book. Swap roles, bury the truth, and never speak of it again. Jack only found out decades later, after he'd already become a global star. But it wasn't from a heartfelt family confession. It was from a reporter at Time magazine, fact-checking a piece. Imagine that. Your entire identity dropped on you in a phone call by a stranger. Jack was stunned. But he didn't spiral. He didn't lash out. He said simply, "It's a dramatic event, but it's not what I'd call traumatizing. I was well brought up. Cool, calm, maybe even numb." But if you look at his roles after that, darker, angrier, like something broke beneath the surface. Loretta Young, the child she pretended wasn't hers. She was America's sweetheart. Elegant, devout, the picture of purity. And yet for decades, Loretta Young lived with a secret so big, it could have destroyed everything she built. In 1935, while filming Call of the Wild, Loretta had a brief affair with her co-star, a rough-edged married actor named Clark Gable. Months later, she disappeared. No one questioned it much. Actresses were always taking vacations back then. But when Loretta returned, she had something with her, a baby girl named Judy, who mysteriously didn't appear in any press photos, wasn't seen in public, and for years, was simply referred to as Loretta's adopted child. But Judy wasn't adopted. She was Loretta's biological daughter. And Gable's. Loretta hid the pregnancy, gave birth in secret, and even arranged for the child to be placed in an orphanage, only to adopt her months later, once the scandal had cooled. Why all the deception? Because being a single mother, especially to the illegitimate child of a married co-star, would have ended her career on the spot. And she carried that guilt for the rest of her life. In private letters, she reportedly referred to it as her sin, and to Judy as the child she loved but could never publicly claim. Judy didn't learn the truth until she was well into adulthood. And even then, she said it explained everything. The shame, the silence, the distance. Loretta died with her secret barely spoken aloud. Raymond Burr, the fake wife and dead child that never existed. Raymond Burr played a man of truth and justice on TV, the legendary Perry Mason. But off-screen, almost nothing about his personal story was real. Over the years, he told interviewers that he had been married, that his wife had died tragically in a plane crash, and that he had a son who passed away from leukemia. The press repeated it without question. Headlines ran with the heartbreak. But after Raymond's death in 1993, researchers started digging. And what they found was chilling. There was no record of any wife. No death certificate. No son. Not even a marriage license. It had all been made up. Fabricated, piece by piece, to shield a truth Raymond never felt safe revealing in Hollywood, that he was gay. Back then, being out could end a career overnight. So Raymond did what many did, but few to this extent. He created a fake family to protect his real one. A partner he kept hidden for 35 years. Friends say the lies weren't malicious, they were survival. But it raises a question Hollywood still hasn't answered. How many other perfect backstories were just scripts? Mary Astor, the diary that ended her career. In public, Mary Astor was a vision of 1930s Hollywood grace. But in private, she was scribbling the kind of confessions that could torch a career. Her personal diary, meant for her eyes only, held detailed entries of passionate affairs with some of the industry's most powerful men. And when her messy custody battle with her ex-husband exploded into court, he weaponized that diary to try and destroy her. He didn't just accuse her of being an unfit mother, he leaked excerpts. Suddenly, the tabloids had a field day. They didn't care about the custody case. They cared about the steamy details. The lovers. The secrets. The hypocrisy of America's sweethearts. Studios panicked. Moral watchdogs demanded punishment. But here's what no one expected. Instead of running from the scandal, Mary faced it. Head on. The court sealed the diary. The judge ruled in her favor. And Astor? She went on to win an Oscar. Her career didn't die. It evolved. But that diary, burned or not, remains one of the most explosive family weapons Hollywood's ever seen. Patty Duke, the paternity mystery that shook Hollywood. Patty Duke spent her life in the spotlight, but even she didn't know the truth about her own child. When she gave birth to her son in 1971, she named John Aston, her husband at the time, as the father. But for years, rumors swirled. Because right before she married Aston, Patty had been romantically linked to not one, but two other men, actor Desi Arnaz Jr. and rock promoter Michael Tell. And just like that, the paternity question turned into a full-blown Hollywood mystery. Sean Astin, her son, grew up believing John was his biological dad. But as an adult, he started asking questions. A DNA test finally revealed the truth. Michael Tell, the man Patty had married for just 13 days in what she later called a manic episode, was actually Sean's biological father. Patty never lied maliciously. She was struggling with undiagnosed bipolar disorder, pressured by studios, and navigating the chaos of fame. But that one secret unraveled everything. And Sean? He now says he has 4 dads, and loves them all. Only in Hollywood could a paternity test reveal not just truth, but family in its strangest form. Charlie Chaplin, the teenage bride scandal. Charlie Chaplin wasn't just the king of silent film. He was also at the center of one of Hollywood's earliest and most unsettling scandals. At age 35, Chaplin began a relationship with 16-year-old actress Lita Gray, who had been cast in one of his films. When she became pregnant, everything changed. Fearing a public uproar and legal trouble, Since their relationship bordered on statutory territory, Chaplin married her in secret in Mexico. But this wasn't a quiet fix. It was the spark that set off a years-long firestorm. The marriage was a disaster. Lita later accused him of emotional abuse, cruelty, and manipulation. Their divorce became one of the most scandalous in Hollywood history, with lurid details hitting newspapers almost daily. The settlement? Over $800,000, an astronomical amount at the time. Studios were embarrassed. America was shocked. And Chaplin, he never really outran the whispers. It was the moment the public saw the cracks beneath his smile. And the beginning of a very long fall from grace. Judy Garland, the family scandal that forced them to flee. Before Judy Garland was America's sweetheart in The Wizard of Oz, her childhood was already stained with secrets. Born Frances Gumm, she was raised in a showbiz family constantly on the move. But their sudden relocations weren't just about chasing fame, they were about running. According to multiple biographers, Judy's father, Frank Gumm, had a history of inappropriate behavior involving young boys. Rumors of scandals trailed the family from town to town, forcing them to pack up and vanish overnight, multiple times. Judy was barely old enough to understand what was happening, but she lived through the fallout. The pressure, the silence, the shame. Later in life, she struggled with addiction, anxiety, and control. Much of it rooted in a childhood where the adults around her were constantly hiding things. Hollywood loved her smile, her voice, her innocence, but the truth behind it all? That was never part of the script. Merle Oberon, the secret she hid behind makeup and lies. Merle Oberon dazzled audiences with her exotic beauty and poise, becoming the first woman of South Asian descent to be nominated for an Oscar, though almost no one knew it. And that was by design. Born in Bombay to a Sri Lankan mother, Merle was terrified that her heritage would ruin her career in a deeply racist Hollywood. So, she rewrote her entire life story. Claimed she was born in Tasmania. Passed off her mother as a servant. Hid old family photos. And bleached her skin so she could pass as white under the harsh studio lights. For decades, she lived in fear of being found out. Even her closest friends didn't know. But behind closed doors, the anxiety ate at her. Merle wasn't just acting on camera, she was acting every moment of her life, pretending to be someone the industry would accept. It wasn't just self-preservation. It was survival. Because back then, truth didn't make you famous. It got you erased. Bing Crosby, the father his sons feared. To the public, Bing Crosby was the ultimate crooner, warm, smooth, and comforting, like a Christmas morning in a velvet robe. But to his sons, he was something else entirely. Behind the charm and holiday specials, Bing ran his home with cold discipline and harsh punishments. After his death, two of his sons, Dennis and Gary, came forward with disturbing claims about life under their father's roof. They described him as emotionally distant, quick to anger, and obsessed with control. Gary said he was beaten with belts. Dennis called their upbringing a nightmare. And while some family members tried to downplay the allegations, the emotional scars were undeniable. The pressure to be perfect. The constant fear of doing something wrong. It left deep wounds. One son died by suicide. Another spiraled into addiction. Bing's legacy may be eternal on vinyl, but for his children, the memories were anything but golden. Joan Crawford, the truth behind Mommy Dearest. She was the embodiment of golden age glamour, fierce, poised, larger than life. But behind the camera, Joan Crawford's parenting cast a shadow darker than any of her film roles. Her adopted daughter, Christina, would later publish a memoir titled Mommy Dearest, and Hollywood would never look at Joan the same again. Christina alleged a childhood filled with terror, beatings, emotional manipulation, public humiliation. The infamous no-wire hangers scene wasn't a Hollywood exaggeration, it was based on what she claimed really happened. Crawford's defenders said Christina was bitter and opportunistic. Others, including her brother, denied the abuse. But the book struck a nerve, because it wasn't just about Joan. It was about the polished facade so many stars maintained while chaos brewed behind closed doors. Whether you believe every detail or not, the damage was done. Crawford's legacy became inseparable from the horror her own daughter described. And Hollywood's perfect mother became its most haunted one. Rita Hayworth, the dance that hid a dark secret. She was the ultimate femme fatale, sultry, stunning, every man's fantasy in a satin glove. But Rita Hayworth's rise to stardom came at a devastating cost. Long before she was the face of Gilda, Rita was dancing in nightclubs with her own father. Eduardo Cancino was not just her dance partner, he was her abuser. According to multiple biographers and family accounts, the relationship was deeply disturbing. Her cousin once said Rita confided that her father had sexually abused her during their dance tours. It's a part of her story that was hidden for decades, masked by red lipstick and Technicolor film. The very act that made her famous, dancing seductively on stage, was tied to unspeakable trauma. And as she grew older, Rita struggled with alcoholism, trust issues, and failed marriages. The public saw glamour. But behind the scenes, she was a woman forever haunted by the man who taught her how to dance. Spencer Tracy, the secret son he rarely acknowledged. Spencer Tracy was known as one of the greatest actors of Hollywood's golden age, but behind the camera, his family life was marked by shame and silence. In 1924, he and his wife Louise welcomed a son, John, who was born deaf. But instead of embracing his son publicly, Spencer hid him from the world. He rarely spoke of John, and many in Hollywood didn't even know he had a child. Friends said Tracy was consumed by guilt, blaming himself for the disability. Rather than seek help or advocate for awareness, he threw himself into work, disappearing into film sets and bottle after bottle. While his wife quietly helped found the John Tracy Clinic, one of the first speech and hearing centers for children, Spencer stayed in the shadows. Some said he loved his son deeply but was too broken to face the truth. Others believed his pride couldn't handle the reality. Either way, the silence spoke louder than any performance. Rock Hudson, the marriage that was never meant to be. To the world, Rock Hudson was the ultimate leading man, tall, handsome, and irresistibly charming. But the romantic fantasy the studios sold was just that, a fantasy. In reality, Hudson was a closeted gay man in an era when even a whisper of homosexuality could destroy a career. So when rumors started circulating, his agent stepped in with a plan straight out of a script: stage a marriage. In 1955, Hudson wed Phyllis Gates, his agent's secretary, in what many now believe was a desperate PR move. The marriage lasted only 3 years, and behind closed doors, it was strained from the start. Gates later claimed she didn't know he was gay when they married, but some questioned that. Regardless, Hudson spent the rest of his life hiding who he was. He avoided questions, deflected rumors, and lived in fear. It wasn't until 1985, when he became the first major celebrity to die of AIDS, that the truth shattered the illusion. His death forced Hollywood, and the world, to confront its hypocrisy. The man who played perfect husbands on screen had never been allowed to be himself off it. Bobby Darin, the sister who wasn't. Part 2. He was one of the biggest music sensations of the 1960s. Charming, energetic, and adored by millions. But Bobby Darin's biggest fan was the woman he believed was his sister. The woman who helped raise him, encouraged him, stood by him every step of the way. But after his career had skyrocketed, Bobby found out the truth. She wasn't his sister. She was his mother. The woman he thought was his mother? Actually, his grandmother. Just like Jack Nicholson's story, it was a desperate family cover-up to protect a young woman from shame. And just like Nicholson, Bobby only learned the truth when he was already an adult. But this revelation hit him hard. His identity, his roots, all shattered overnight. Friends say he was never the same after that. The performer who once lit up stages with confidence and charisma started to spiral, emotionally and physically. And he died young, at just 37. Some say it was his health. Others think it was heartbreak. Lana Turner. The night her daughter killed a mobster. Lana Turner was Hollywood's ultimate blonde bombshell, glamorous, seductive, and always in the headlines. But the most shocking chapter of her life wasn't about a role she played. It was about a man she loved. In the late 1950s, Turner got involved with Johnny Stompanato, a handsome, dangerous man with ties to the mob. Their relationship was toxic. Friends described him as controlling and violent. One night in 1958, during a heated argument at Lana's home, things spiraled. But before it could turn deadly for Lana, her 14-year-old daughter Cheryl Crane stepped in. Grabbing a kitchen knife, Cheryl stabbed Stompanato in what she later said was an act of protection. He died on the spot. The story rocked Hollywood. A starlet. A mobster. A teenage daughter turned killer. The case went to court, and after a whirlwind inquest, Cheryl was declared to have acted in justifiable homicide. But the emotional damage ran far deeper. Cheryl would later say the trauma of that night, and the media circus that followed, left scars that never fully healed. As for Lana, she kept working, kept smiling. But the image of the perfect movie star was gone forever, replaced by something far more complicated, a mother who couldn't protect her child, until her child protected her. Marlon Brando, the family tragedy he couldn't outrun. Marlon Brando may have redefined acting with his raw, magnetic presence, but behind the brooding intensity was a man shattered by unimaginable family trauma. His son Christian Brando made headlines in 1990 when he was arrested for the murder of Dag Drolet, the boyfriend of Marlon's daughter, Cheyenne. Christian claimed he was protecting his sister from abuse, but the details were murky, and the media descended like vultures. Marlon testified in court, visibly shaken, tearfully describing the dysfunction in his household. Christian pled guilty to manslaughter and served 5 years in prison. But that was just the beginning of the heartbreak. Cheyenne, already battling mental health struggles, spiraled further after Drolet's death. Just 5 years later, she took her own life. Brando never recovered. He withdrew from the spotlight, gained weight, and retreated into isolation. The man who once captivated audiences with fiery passion became a recluse haunted by loss. He blamed himself for being an absent father, for the chaos in his home, for everything he couldn't fix. And in the end, the Brando legacy wasn't just about art or fame. It was about a family splintered beyond repair, and a father who could never escape the shadow of his children's pain. Natalie Wood, the death that tore her family apart. Natalie Wood's life ended in mystery, but the damage didn't stop at the water's edge. In 1981, the 43-year-old actress drowned off the coast of Catalina Island after a night aboard a yacht with her husband Robert Wagner, co-star Christopher Walken, and the ship's captain. But it's what happened before that still haunts Hollywood. According to multiple accounts, there was an argument, shouting, tension, and then silence. Hours later, Natalie's body was found floating in the water, with bruises that didn't quite match the original story. The official cause of death was accidental drowning, but her sister, Lana Wood, never accepted that. She spent decades publicly accusing Wagner of knowing more than he admitted, even calling for his arrest. The case was reopened in 2011 and reclassified as suspicious, but Wagner has never been charged. To this day, the Wood family remains fractured. Some want peace. Others want justice. And Natalie? She remains frozen in time, a star whose life ended too soon, and whose family was shattered by questions no one seems able or willing to answer. Errol Flynn, the charges that ruined his family name. Errol Flynn was the swashbuckling heartthrob of 1930s Hollywood, a man who made danger look dashing. But off-screen, Flynn's private life was riddled with controversy, and one scandal nearly destroyed him. In 1942, he was charged with statutory rape by 2 teenage girls, both under 18. The trial was a media circus, with Flynn's charm on full display, winking at the jury, playing up his bad boy image, and delivering the now iconic line, "I like my whiskey old and my women young." He was acquitted, but the damage lingered. Studios were cautious. Sponsors were nervous. And his family, they bore the weight of the whispers long after Flynn was gone. His children spent years trying to reclaim their last name, especially his son, Sean, who became a war photojournalist in Vietnam, hoping to write his own story. Tragically, Sean disappeared in Cambodia in 1970 and was never found. For the Flynn family, the scandals didn't just stain the headlines, they followed them across generations. Errol's shadow was long, and for his family, escaping it proved nearly impossible. Elizabeth Taylor, a family torn apart by fame, addiction, and scandal. Elizabeth Taylor wasn't just a star. She was the star. 8 marriages. Violet eyes. Diamonds the size of fists. But behind the image of Hollywood royalty was a woman whose family life unraveled in public over and over again. Elizabeth's children didn't grow up in a normal household. They grew up in chaos. Constant travel. Endless photo ops. New husbands rotating in and out like scenes in a movie. By the time her kids were teenagers, Some of them had been through more stepfathers than birthdays. Her daughter Liza once said that her mother's fame made it nearly impossible to feel seen, like she was living in Elizabeth's shadow, not her home. And as Taylor's addictions deepened, to pills, to alcohol, to the cycle of heartbreak, her children became collateral damage. They watched as their mother went in and out of rehab. They saw the headlines, the scandals, the tabloid lies, and sometimes the tabloid truths. And it wasn't just the chaos of her own life. Elizabeth married Richard Burton twice, and both times, the passion turned violent. Their arguments were legendary. Furniture smashed. Voices raised. And all of it unfolded with her children just down the hall. Later in life, Elizabeth tried to make amends. She championed AIDS awareness, supported her children financially, and fought to rebuild broken relationships. But some wounds never fully healed. One of her sons, Michael, spent years battling addiction of his own. Another struggled with being the child of a woman worshipped by the world but absent at home. Elizabeth Taylor gave everything to the screen: love, pain, vulnerability. But in doing so, she took pieces from her family that could never be fully returned. And while Hollywood crowned her a queen, her family bore the cost of that crown. And just like that, the curtain falls. But not on a stage, not in front of an audience, on the truth. These weren't just scandals. These were betrayals that cut through the spotlight, right into bloodlines. Children raised on lies. Parents buried in shame. Sisters who were mothers. Stepfathers who crossed the line. And legends who carried secrets so heavy, they shaped every smile, every breakdown, every career move they ever made. This wasn't just about fame. It was about what it cost. Because in old Hollywood, protecting the image was worth everything, even if it meant destroying the family behind it. So the next time you see a vintage smile frozen in black and white, just remember what it might have been hiding.